Hello everybody, it's Josie here. I'm going to be talking about two books today. So I thought it would be really interesting to kind of juxtapose a kind of a classic lesbian YA novel that came out in the early 80s in an era where lesbian fiction, particularly in YA, was not big. And then also kind of a modern book, and this is a woman having a relationship for the first time with another woman, but this was a book published in 2014, so it's very much contemporary, and it's also an adult book. So the two books I'm talking about is this one over here is Annie on My Mind by Nancy Garden, and then the second one I'm talking about is Women by Chloe Caldwell. So I just find it so interesting to read kind of classic lesfic. I read a lot of, I actively try and find a lot of stuff from the 80s and the 90s, I'm calling that classic, and then against kind of the modern stuff that's kind of coming out now. This is 2014, so it's fairly recent. So I'm going to start with this one, with Annie on My Mind. This book is such a classic. If you Google lesbian YA fiction, this is one of the books that will come up constantly as, you know, a recommendation, or if you go into Amazon, if you type that in, this will come up. I've been trying to read this for ages. It was out of print. I believe this is the new printed edition, which also actually includes a great interview with Nancy Garden. And it's really interesting. It asks, so this is Own Voices. So Nancy Garden is gay. And it talks about, you know, her experiences. It talks about her opinion on, you know, lesfic and queer literature then and now, and her experiences growing up. So I definitely read. I mean, if you can get your hands on this edition, it's the one with the interview. It's really, really interesting. It's really interesting to read her thoughts, and really lovely to read them. So the premise of the story is you've got Liza and Annie, and they kind of, they're two 17-year-old girls, and this is very much a love story. It's about the two of them falling in love at its core. I mean, that is what it is, and that is what I loved about this book. It is such a beautiful, gentle love story. But it's also, you know, that time period, kind of the idea that being gay might be dirty still, or afraid to tell your parents, and what would people think. So you have that in there. You have a really horrible headmistress. So the two girls they're kind of, I suppose, from different parts of town. So Annie is the daughter of an immigrant family, Italian immigrant family, and the school she goes to downtown is not that great. And then Liza goes to quite a, should we call it almost like a posh, semi-private school in New York, and the headmistress of that school is vile. Horrible character. I mean, great for the story, but just a horrible person. And you just have this beautiful kind of slow-burn love story throughout the whole book, and the two girls really falling for each other. And then something happens, people find out, and then how they deal with that. And I just thought it was really beautiful. I think it just stands up as well. So I find that sometimes when you read books that are from different eras, and I will hold my hands up and say I'm not the biggest fan of historical fiction generally. And I'm also, and people are going to hate me, not the biggest fan of classics either, because, just my opinion, I sometimes think that they're overrated just because they're classics and they're not necessarily that great anymore, but that's just my opinion. There are classics that I do like, but I'm not the biggest fan. So I always think it's interesting to see how a story holds up over the years, and I think this stands up against all of the other YA fiction that I have now. I think it's beautiful. Just such a stunning love story. Beautifully written. It's set at Christmas as well, so I'm definitely rereading this. So I have set my target to finish all my TBR by hopefully end of September. We'll see, end of October maybe. And then for November and December, I just want to do like a rereadathon. And this is definitely being reread at Christmas because it's set at Christmas. This and Carol, like if you read this and Carol at Christmas for queer ladies, that's a great Christmas present. It is beautiful. I loved it. So then after that, I picked up Women by Chloe Caldwell. And this is very much more contemporary. So this is adult. And this is about a woman. I'm trying to remember what her name is, actually. It's terrible. I can't remember her name. I know the protagonist, the love interest is called Finn, which is a great name. But anyway, so you've got the main character who, she's moving from the countryside to the city. She's moved from the countryside to the city. And, in the city, she meets this woman called Finn, and she falls for her. The rub in the ointment here is that Finn is actually in a relationship. So I would say that is something that, depending on how you feel about that, and it is very much addressed because it's one of the main issues in the book, is that Finn is actually having an affair. And it depends on how you feel about that, what you think about that. This is very beautifully written. It's very sparsely. It's a very short book and it's kind of sparsely written, but I really love the style of the writing. So again, it's quite a contemporary, I think, style of writing. I see a lot more books kind of being written in this sort of style. The relationship is interesting, that idea of control, that idea of, the whole concept around cheating and partners and what you think about that. This story resonated for me on a personal level with some of my relationships, so it was deeply personal to me in a lot of ways. But I do think it is really interesting. It kind of explores relationships and relationship dynamics. Again, it explores identity and trying to work out who you are, and being authentic to who you are. So I really enjoyed this. I liked the way it was written. I kind of like that modern prose, that sparseness, the fact that this is quite short but actually packs the whole story into the book. But like I said, it is very brutally honest in the sense that certain things, the emotions and the relationship aspect and the fact that people do cheat and what that means, and promises people give you and things like that. I really, really enjoyed it. So both of these books I would very much recommend, but they are very different in the sense that this explores definitely the more adult concept of, cheating in relationships, and also identity in the sense that Finn is very, I suppose, classically butch identifying, and she actually gives the protagonist in this book a copy of Leslie Feinberg's Stone Butch Blues, and which, if you haven't read, is incredible, and it really kind of captures that sort of, I guess again, that sort of 80s butch lesbian experience, and Finn, the character, the love interest in this book, is very much that sort of 80s butch lesbian, which I liked. Kind of, again, it explores that femme butch dynamic. Again, it depends how you feel about that. I know a lot of people nowadays don't necessarily like that, but that's very much an aspect of lesbian culture still. I just find it fascinating. So both of these books, I mean, a 5-star read. Women probably 4.5. But I just love these. I thought they were really, really good. Like I said, Christmas love story, Annie on my mind, absolutely. If you want to explore something in terms of, relationships and kind of butch lesbian culture, and that, this one is great. But yeah, highly recommend both of these for all my lesfic lovers out there. So yeah, that is my review. Let me know if you've actually read any of these, what you thought of them. And yeah, if you have any recommendations, as always, please let me know, and I will speak to you all again very soon. Bye-bye.